Hey, go Knucklers, it's Flo. Welcome to episode 64 with Mr. Junior Ashmore. Let me go ahead and introduce you. Oh, before I introduce you to Lisa, don't forget on the YouTube channel, guys, please subscribe, click the notification bell, leave a comment, and then if you do leave a comment, we will see it live. And then, of course, like the video. So anyway, let me introduce you to my co-host, Lisa Nolan Hafner. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Flo. How are you?
Good. It seemed like it's been a while since we've been on.
I know.
So who's our guest tonight?
We are so honored to have Mr. Junior Ashmore with us. Welcome, and we're so appreciative that you decided to come have a nice evening chat with us. And so, Junior, just for our viewers, tell us what year you graduated and where you're currently living.
I graduated in 1980. Coached basketball for about 40 years. Retired a couple of years ago, and my wife and I, Cindy, are living in Lubbock, Texas at this time.
Okay, and you graduated from Hale Center High School, right?
I'm sorry?
You graduated from Hale Center High School?
Yes, ma'am. I graduated from Hale Center. Spent a lot of time in Plainview, but I went to school and graduated from Hale Center.
Well, I was going to say, is it safe to say that you're Plainview's adopted son?
Well, I guess you could say that. I spent a lot of time there. Hale Center didn't have baseball, and that's the majority of at that point in time. I played basketball and baseball, and so during the school year, going to school at Hale Center, played basketball, and then as soon as summer rolled around or school was out, from the time I was in fifth grade till the time I graduated in high school, I spent most of my summer, hanging out with the Plainview guys and playing baseball.
Out of curiosity, Junior, how many people were in your graduating class?
Oh man, I'm going to make a guesstimate and say, I think 50 would be a fair number, 50 to 55. Okay. It's different than you guys at Plainview, having 200 or 300 or, maybe whatever you had, but probably even more than that. But we probably had 50, 50 to 60. Even Hale Center's changed a little bit, even now they've kind of gone down. But back then we'd have 50 or 60, people graduate from high school.
I think Plainview averaged around three, anywhere from 320 to 370, and
something like that.
So I mean, it was 50, 55 is pretty good, and it was the high school its own building, or did you guys have like everybody in one building?
No, it was big enough at that point in time, and I think it still is. But we had a high school, 9 through 12, had a junior high, 6 through 8, and then our elementary school was. Actually, we had, believe it or not, we had 4 schools. We had a high school, we had the junior high, and then the 5th grade went to what they call the North Elementary, I believe, and then the kindergarten or the elementary school was grades 1 through 4. So. It's changed over the years, but back in 1980, that's kind of what it was. Yes, sir.
Now, were y'all 2A?
At that point, yes, ma'am. At that point in time, we were 2A, which, if you relate it to nowadays, it would be 3A. But we were a 2A school. That's something I was thinking about when I was going to talk to you guys. This is how much it's changed in 40 years. In 1980, if you took our football or basketball district, we had us, Petersburg, Lorenzo, Crosbyton, Rawls, Shallowater. I mean, we were all in the same district. Now, Hale Center's dropped to 2A, so they've dropped a division lower. And a lot of like Lorenzo and Petersburg, they're 6-man schools. And so, it's changed quite a bit in 40 years. But 40 years ago, we had a pretty good population in high school, and as did a lot of those rural communities. And so we had a pretty good district. It was pretty good.
Well, I know Plainview. I mean, same thing happened to them when we were there. It was a 5A school. I think now they're 4A.
Yeah, I believe so, that they've dropped to
Mhm.
the 4A.
Well, let
No,
me ask you. Go ahead.
no, they're still 5A.
Are they?
Uh,
Okay.
and I probably shouldn't say this. I'm going to give you my opinion. It'd probably help them to be 4A, but no, they're still. That's what's crazy is they're still 5A. They're in the district of Lubbock Cooper. Uh, the Amarillo schools. Uh, you know, their student enrollment just keeps them at the 5A level. They're kind of at the bottom of 5A, I think. But I thought the last few years it would help Plainview to be a big 4A school, but
Yeah.
I thought they got dropped at one time to 4A.
they could have a few years ago, but mainly now that they have, especially in football, Division I and Division II, they've been a 5A Division II school, I believe. And so, they in fact, their football team, I believe it was last week, got a good win in their first district game against Lubbock Cooper, which, when you think about Lubbock Cooper to me and you think about Plainview, that's two different size schools nearly, but they're still in the same division.
Well, funny you say that, I was going to say, funny you say that because I mentioned this in a couple of shows before that back then when we were, in Plainview and you're in Hale Center, Cooper and Friendship, Canyon, Randall. I mean, none of those schools existed. It's Monterey, Lubbock High. I mean, Monterey, Coronado, Lubbock High, Staccato, and then Hartford, and then Palo Duro, Caprock, Tascosa, and I forgot just one other. But anyway, that was it. I mean, that was the school. But now, 40 years later, everyone's moving out to the skirts of Lubbock and Amarillo.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how things have grown. Lubbock, they have Lubbock Cooper. They have Monterey, Coronado, Estacada, Lubbock High, the same ones. But now, Lubbock Cooper's grown. And then, like I said earlier, they built the new school, Lubbock Cooper Liberty. And, they'll probably, I don't know about this time, but in 2 years, they'll probably be 5A also. And then Friendship, who they've got a new high school. This is their first year, Friendship Memorial. And probably, I don't know about next year, but in 2 years, they'll be 5A. And I really, Lubbock could have a 5A district probably with 6 to 7 to 8 schools without leaving, this area. I mean, that's just how much it's grown right here and changed. But, like you said, with Friendship and Cooper, I can remember back when I was in high school, we played Friendship and Cooper in football.
Oh, wow.
But they were 3A schools at that
Yeah.
time, and so it's just crazy how things have changed and grown. And, you don't think about our area, versus where you guys are at of growing like that, but it really has. And, there's 2 new schools here in Lubbock, and, Amarillo, they've got, Bushland is kind of a new school there. They're a 3A school, but, it's crazy how things have grown and spread out and things like that.
Well, let's go back to high school, Junior. Since Hale Center was such a small school and district, and you were such a big basketball star, did you have to try out for varsity, or did they have like freshman JV and varsity, or just it was anybody could try out?
That in the smaller schools, we didn't have to try out. That's a picture of my freshman year that you're showing right there. That we had a really good team that year, but I didn't have to try out. I was lucky that I had some older guys kind of took me under their wing, and I made varsity as a freshman, and that's my varsity team my freshman year. We won our district that year, and then that was back in the days when only one team made it. There wasn't the 4. And we won district, and in fact, it happened to us like 3 times. But Vega beat us in by district. We only made 1 round, but Vega went to the state tournament that year. But there's some great guys in that picture. There's Dennis and Ira Poindexter served in our military in the Navy. That's the bankers. There's some great people in there. That back row is mainly juniors and seniors, and then I'm in the middle there, the little bitty freshmen. But they kind of took me under their wing, and accepted me, and I kind of helped out that way. But we didn't have to try out, in those smaller schools. In the bigger schools, when they start 7th and 8th grade, they may have 100 kids trying out. And in the smaller schools, they hope they get 12 to 13 kids to play in each grade. So it's a little bit different. But
yeah, I guess they hope enough kids come out to actually make a team, right?
yes, yes.
And I'm gonna guess that's you, second to the right.
I'm the one. You see the blonde-headed guy in the back with you can see number 4.
Yes.
I'm right below him and a little to the right in the picture.
Yes.
And that's the guys on the back. Of course, the coach is on the far left, but O.C. Johnson, he was a great player for us, and he's an administrator here in Lubbock, doing great. Ira Poindexter's the next pitcher. He served in the Navy in our military for years. He's retired now in California. He was a great athlete, a great guy. And then the guy in the middle is some kind of physicist or doctor, I don't know. And the next guy's he's a dentist here in Lubbock, and the guy beside him is a banker here in Lubbock. So we had a cool group. We had an awesome group.
Can you share any good stories? I mean, memories of some of the games, some of your tough opponents, your rivalries. Can you share any stories of any good games?
Really, with this group here, I was so young. I really didn't know the rivalries and stuff yet. I remember playing Vega in by district, and they had about a 6'5" player that was a great player, and I was a little freshman, and we ended up losing by 2. But I remember Ira and Osi especially kind of getting on to me because he would bring the ball down the floor, and I was kind of guarding him, and they kept saying, well, he's so big, you ought to be able to go around him and steal it. And I couldn't steal it. And, they just couldn't understand why. But, I really wasn't into the rivalries yet. You know what I'm saying? I mean, as time went on, we had some great rivalries with Crosbyton and Lorenzo.
Well, it doesn't matter if you're afraid. I was asking just in general, basketball career.
Our biggest rival was New Deal when I was in high school. And they would, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it because it's the truth. They were really good in football. They were state ranked, and they would usually just clobber us in football. But then in basketball, we would kind of return the favor. And when we did play them in basketball, I can always remember that, how the football players or the baseball players all, they'd come to the game and scream and holler and do all that stuff. And I can remember, New Deal at that time had a couple of players, Ron Mayo, and, in fact, he played at Texas Tech for 4 years on the offensive line. But, they would get in the stands, lean over the rail, and I'd antagonize them a little bit, and we'd have a good time. But, New Deal was our biggest rival because we're not that far down the interstate. But as far as good games, I mean, for a 2A school during my high school career, we would play Lorenzo and Crosbyton, and we might win 97-94 or 92-88. I mean, there was a lot of there were some good basketball players. Chad Davis and his twin brother played at Crosbyton. Chad's the golf pro at Levelland Country Club now, but that was New Deal was our biggest rival. But if you really wanted to get into good basketball, I mean, there was some good basketball between us, Lorenzo, and Crosbyton. And, like I said, 2 teams didn't make it then, or 4 teams didn't make it then. It was 1. And so, those games meant a lot because if you didn't win, you didn't make the playoffs. And so we were fortunate to do that. We couldn't beat Vega for some reason, but we could get in the playoffs. But
tournaments. I was talking to Lisa. I know that Wayland had that flying Queens tournament during Thanksgiving, but I knew they also hosted a men's high school. I don't know if it's the same time during Thanksgiving or if it was a different.
It was the weekend after they they called it the Queens Classic.
Queens Classic. Yes.
That's what they had it forever, and people don't realize that up until the NCAA changed the rules, the Queens Classic had some great players come play, there at Wayland.
Yeah.
Kansas and Louisiana Tech and, Lynette Woodard played for Kansas. She was a great player. And then they started having the Pioneer Classic, which was the weekend after, which was boys. And
That's right. Pioneer Classic. I could not remember.
That's it, Pioneer. Did you ever play against Clovis, Bubba?
I I never played against Bubba Jennings. We're the same age. Now I'll tell you a story, and now it makes sense now that I'm older. But at that time, when I was, still in high school, and when you're in high school, you think you're the best and you're the stud and all that. But I'll never forget that, and I don't remember what night it was, but Clovis was playing Plainview, and we were playing at home in Hale Center, and Gerald Myers was the coach at Tech at that time, and it offended me, pissed me off a little bit, that Gerald Myers would drive through Hale Center and not stop and watch me play, but he would drive to Plainview to watch Bubba play. And so, and now it all makes sense because Bubba's a great player. I mean, I wasn't at that level, obviously, but, I didn't play against Bubba, but we were in the same county for just a little bit. But anyway, but yeah, Gerald, Coach Myers drove right through Hale Center and didn't even stop, but he went to Plainview to watch Bubba play Plainview.
Have you gotten over the grudge, Junior?
Oh, yes, ma'am, a little bit. Bubba coached at when I was at Plainview, Bubba coached at Coronado the first couple of years, and I knew him before then, but I got to know him then, and then in playing golf and in some golf tournaments, saw him quite a bit. But I'd always kid with him and at the golf tournaments and stuff. I could outshoot you. I'd always say that, and all those guys would try to get us to get a shooting contest and stuff, and I'm pretty much glad they didn't because I'm sure he would have outshot me. But
well, I was just going to ask you that. They didn't have a three-point period back when you guys were going to high school and college. So, who would shoot the most three-pointers if they had it back then?
Well, I'm gonna assume both of us would have been pretty three-point heavy at that time because that's what's crazy is how the game changed because when we played. When I played in college, they wanted people that could shoot, but your game was, the gamer percentages, you're going to make more from the block than you are from 25 feet. I mean, that's obvious. And so, that's kind of how the game went. When they added the 3-point line, as you know now, man, they getting people that can shoot. And, if Bubba would have played during that time or, it would have helped me tremendously, especially in college. I mean, in high school, we shot from wherever, anyway. But in college, we were a little bit limited because if you shot it and made it, it was all right. But if you didn't make it, the coach would kind of tell you need to throw it to my 6'9" post player in there. But it would have definitely helped. It would have helped me a lot to have 3-point line.
Speaking of college, Junior, so did Kilgore come recruit you? Did you get a scholarship to go to play at Kilgore?
Yes, ma'am. I was very fortunate, and some coaches that had talked to me knew the coach at Kilgore, and so I got to go there. It was a great 2 years, long ways from home, 500 miles from home, but I played for a really good coach there, and that helped me. Got my school paid for, and then
look at that handsome young man.
look at the feather. Look at those locks.
Ooh, yeah.
I was kidding my son, and one of his teammates that played for me at Spearman showed him that picture last night, and I was talking about, hey, I'd have put 30 up on you guys, and they were both telling me how they could guard me and all that good stuff. But it's been kind of fun picking out old pictures and seeing that stuff. But it was fun.
How tall are you? I mean, are you 6'2", 6'3"?
6'3". I was 6'3". That's another thing that's changed. That was one thing that helped me coming out of high school is I was a big shooting guard. And, 6'3" was big at that time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And now, if you're not 6'5", you're pretty much, you better be really fast. And, it was a fun 2 years at Kilgore. I did get to go out and eat with and practice with, but Spud Webb.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Spud Webb narrowly came to Kilgore with us. He was a year younger than I was, but he ended up going to Midland. But he came to practice, and we got to, take him to eat and hang out with him. And so,
Yeah, he played for the Hawks. Yeah.
yeah, he played the Hawks, won the dunk contest. He was a little bitty kid. I mean, you wouldn't
Yeah.
believe, he was he might have been 5'7", but, when he came to work out with us and stuff, we kind of snickered like, who is this guy? Because he didn't weigh, I bet he didn't weigh 150 pounds. And sure enough, we found out who he was pretty quick. But
oh yeah. Well, hey, I gotta ask you this. I was in sports and playing. I mostly played baseball, but I did play basketball and football. My younger, like my freshman, sophomore years and stuff, but mostly baseball. But one thing I heard about you, and it could be a number in the legend, that when you went to Kilgore, there was a guy that were teasing you because these guys were coming up there and says, Junior, can you do this? And they were dunking it. But then you were out there like 25, 30 feet and you just chunked it and then hit nothing by net. And you said, I don't need the dunk when I can do this. So I heard that from many years ago. I don't know if that's true or not.
That was my problem. I mean, I there was I don't mean this to sound bad, but there were very few people that when I played basketball, I felt like could outshoot me. There was one that he played at Wayland with us, and but I couldn't jump that high. I mean, I could jump okay, but I just, to be a really good player at that time, I needed to be a little bit faster and jump a little bit higher. But yes, that was true. Those guys would be doing all, and I'd always tell them, well, how many dunks you're going to get in a game, but I'm going to make 5 or 6 of these, to offset that. But yeah, my jumping ability didn't get me where I got. I can promise you that.
Here's the difference between sports back then to now, is that nowadays, if coaches see players that have like the talent that you had, but are short on like jumping, they would train you in plyometrics in order to increase your ability. I mean, like the science behind physical fitness and athleticism and how they train athletes now is so different, because there is more science applied to it. I want to go back to something that you said, Junior. And this has nothing to do with basketball. It has to do with life. And it's, here you are, this kid in Hale Center that spends a lot of time in Plainview, small town West Texas, and you go so far away from home to college. Was that a hard adjustment for you?
It was. I'm not gonna, my dad, I had the greatest parents that enabled me to be, the best I could be at sports. I mean, my dad was a cotton farmer, and my mom was a banker, and they, from the time I was in the 5th grade, if it was summertime, they were taking me to Plainview to practice, and they sacrificed a lot, but it was 501 miles from Hale Center, Texas to Kilgore, Texas. My dad, if we played, 2 to 3 games a week, he would come to at least one game, but he wouldn't spend the night. He would drive home. And so, but to answer your question, it was tough for, I was a mama's boy, and, when they dumped me off, because not only being 500 miles from home, but my freshman year in college, there was 13 guys, 14 guys on the team. There were only 3 of us from Texas. The rest of them, they would go out and recruit. Back in the 1980s in junior college, you didn't have to have a diploma. You could take a GED and get into junior college. And they would go up in the playgrounds into Detroit and Philadelphia and New York, and they would find players. And if they didn't have their diploma, they would pay for their GED and bring them to school. And so not only was I a long ways from home, I was a long ways from what I knew. Us West Texas, people, I was having to get used to people from New York and Philadelphia and things like that. So yeah, it was a tough, I don't know how long, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, I don't know. But, once you got over that, and like I said, it helped my dad. I mean, he would drive once a week, and then he would drive home that night. But it was tough going that far from home, being a mama's boy. But
Sure. I mean,
anyway,
I feel like that experience in the end was a really positive one in terms of shaping you as a young man and moving forward in your career. Like,
yes, ma'am.
when you went, by the time that you transferred to Wayland,
No,
that
no,
experience,
it made me grow up.
okay.
The being from home, and then the coach I played for, his name is Carter T. Williams, and he was tough. I mean, he was, and at the time we were going through it, we thought he was an asshole. I mean, pardon my French, but
That's okay.
but now that I look back on it, he made me a man. He made me grow up, and you have to grow up and kind of fend for yourself. And so, that, yes, that helped me tremendously, just, as a young person, being away from home and having to do things and make decisions on your own. And then, Carter Williams, like I said, during those 2 years, I wasn't always sold on that, but now that I look back at it, he had a lot of ties to Texas A&M, Shelby Metcalf, uh, but he made me, grow up and be a man, and taught us a lot of stuff. Not all good stuff. Well, it was all good stuff, but at that time it wasn't. But he was rough. He was tough. But and then I was lucky for me. I went to Wayland. And my first year I played for Ron Mayberry, who was great coach. And then it was funny. I came to Wayland my junior year, and Ron coached me. And then after my junior year, he went to Kilgore. And so he went to Kilgore to coach, and then that's when Mark Adams came. I was lucky enough to get to play for Mark Adams, there at Wayland. So, it career wise, I was very fortunate, to get to play for those three guys in 4 years.
Well, I try to walk on at Howard Junior College in Big Spring. And right, I met some of the basketball players from the Bronx, from Philly. I mean, you're right. They were in, man, I remember in an English class. Now, my grammar's horrendous, but some of these guys, they could not spell. And I was like, wow. And then I would go sometimes to their practices, and then, of course, their games. And their motto was run and gun and have fun. But the coach, oh my God, he would cuss them out directly. He would say, and I'm gonna cuss. He said, "You motherfucker, you're a lousy piece of shit. You're not gonna eat dinner tonight." He would literally cuss at these young adults. I'm like, wow.
No, trust me. And that's that's what I wanted to say with Carter. I wasn't going to say it. I'm glad you said it, but
Oh no, you can cuss on the show, Junior.
We're adults here, man.
He didn't beat around the bush, and he was tough. And I'll never forget. We didn't have 3-point line, but it was my freshman year, I believe. Well, I'll tell you two stories. My freshman year in college. One, it was the end of the game. 15, 20 seconds left. We were 1 point behind. I got the ball at the top of the circle. I shot. And if you make it, it's great. But if you miss, and I missed, and we end up losing by 1. But when I missed that shot, he took me out with about 10 seconds left. And he told me, he said, if you ever shoot that shot again from the top of the circle at that point in the game, I'm going to send your blankety blank ass. You'll be gone to Hale Center tomorrow morning. And I mean, that's just how they, kind of talked to you and treated you. We didn't get towels or water in practice. I mean, there was no water and there was no towels. And one day during practice, we had a guy named Randy Williams. He was from New York. And coach got a phone call in about the middle of practice that he had to take. And so he told us to get on the line. And at Kilgore, our gym, the dressing rooms and stuff was in the middle of the court. They weren't on the ends. And that's where the water fountains were. And he said, y'all stand on that end of the court till I get back. And, you're talking about grown men, like you said, we're not 15-year-old kids. Randy was probably 21. And Randy said, I'm going to get a drink. And we all kind of tried to talk him out of it. And he said, no, I'm going to get a drink. We went there to get a drink. About the time he got back, coach came out. And he said, what are you doing? He said, I got a drink. And Hector was our manager. And He said, Hector, you get his ass and you get his bags and you fly him and back to New York. And we never saw him again. And
Damn.
I mean, he sent him home for getting a drink, but it's just, and like I said, going through it at that time, I thought, well, what the hell are we doing? But, he made us grow up. And like I said, he was a good coach. He was, but it was just different how they talked to you and treated you and things that nowadays, coach, and I'm not saying everything they do or say was right. That's not my point, but it's just the way it was then. And now they can't even say boo to them or they get in trouble. So,
let me share you a funny story. Like I said, I became friends with some of these basketball players, and I was looking to have a Trans Am, a 79 Trans Am in high school. So I still had it in my freshman year at junior college at Howard Junior. And these guys came up to me, can you give us a ride to the liquor store? I'm like, yeah. So I had a guy around 6'1" on the front seat. And those Trans Am, the back seats ain't that much room. I had two guys, maybe 6'4", 6'6", and a 7-footer in the back. And they're beating the shit out of the guy in the front. Like, why is your little ass up front and we're back here? So, kind of want to go back a little to high school. Living in Hale Center, did Plainview try to recruit you somehow, or maybe get you to move? And then where did you live comparison to the line? I mean, to where you could have gone to Plainview.
I wouldn't say that Plainview recruited me. I wouldn't say that at all. But,
it's 40 years, by the way, past. It's okay to say it.
No, well, Plainview had some good baseball then, and and I'm not, I added to that, and I started my 5th grade summer starting to play baseball in Plainview, so I was there 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, and so getting into high school, I would never say they recruited me, but at the same time, there was always, and my parents and I even discussed it at one point, to be able to play baseball. I wanted to play basketball, but to be able to play baseball, we need to go to Plainview. But, just with my dad farming and I liked Hale Center and, we're all comfortable where we're at. And so we never, it never was a major push. There was talk about it, from me and my parents to, some of the guys that when I got into high school talking about it, but not real full blown, but if you look back at it now, maybe I wish I would have, but I enjoyed Hale Center and had a good career there. And
good for you. Yeah.
So it is no regrets. It was all good. And
good.
I got to play in the summer and, we got to go to Louisiana and all kinds of places. So it all worked out.
How were you able to play in Plainview though? Because, they're strict on their boundaries.
So now say that again.
How were you able to play in Plainview?
Well, just in the summer, in the
right.
That I can't really answer, but back then in the 5th and 6th grade, that was Little League, and at that time they had what they call the American Division, the National Division,
Yes.
And somehow I guess by letting me play or wherever the boundaries fell, I was in the American Division. Irvin Davis, Irvin, great athlete at Plainview, played at the University of Texas. Never played with Irvin on the same team. He was in the National Division. I was in the American Division. And our summer of 6th grade year, our last year in Little League, we won some playoff games and we ended up playing each other to get to go to wherever. And that's the only time I played against Irvin. He pitched for the National League and I pitched for the American League. And I hate to say they beat us 5-2, but I don't know how they did the division lines or that, but they always let me play. And
well, back to when we played, it was Quincy. Anything to the west of Quincy was American. Anything to the east was the National. And funny you mentioned Irvin. I did text him, and then we were texting. I told him you're going to be on the show. That I was going to try to get him to do a surprise. A surprise. Him come on and share a story, but he was unable to. But he said you had a nasty curveball. And he said that you had one of the best curveballs he's seen. So,
I'll tell you, in that game, when I can't remember whoever won that game where they got to go. I mean, it was like the next big step, the regional tournament, and Irvin pitched for them, and I pitched for the American League. Of course, Irvin could hit it out. I didn't care if I batted or not. I just wanted to pitch, but Irvin could hit it out, out of sight. But I had a pretty good curveball, especially for a sixth grader. But I struck him out the first 3 times he came up to bat with that curveball.
No wonder he said you had a nasty curveball.
However, the 4th time he came up to bat, I threw it one time too many, maybe, and he hit it over the left field fence, and they beat us 5-2. So
you hung it probably.
Yeah, I hung it a little bit, but no, that's And then Irvin, he didn't play. When we got in the older leagues, Babe Ruth, and then the senior league, Irvin didn't play. He just mainly played football. But I never played with him, but I played against him, in that game. So it was pretty cool.
Nice. Were you the only kid from Hale Center at that time to come play baseball?
Yes. Believe it or not, it was. My best friend, in fact, one of the pictures I sent you, we're running down the court together. But
let me show that photo.
His name is W.H. Johnson. He came one summer when we were in senior league for a little bit, but there just wasn't any baseball in Hale Center at that time. I mean, and they, and so that's one reason I started going to Plainview is they just didn't have it. That's W.H., fastest, quickest guy I've ever. I don't care. I played against Spud Webb, and he's not quicker than W.H., but W.H. is another one that he's a great athlete in Hale Center. He's the mayor of Hale Center at this time.
Oh,
and I don't, if you'd have told me running down that court when we were 18 years old that he'd be the mayor of Hale Center now, I'd have said, kiss my ass. He's not going to be. But
I mean, he has arms like Irvin Davis. It looks like
he was a great athlete. He's that guy right there is probably my best friend from 19. I don't know. His family. His sister Patricia was a great player at Hale Center, and his mom kind of worked for our family a little bit. But that guy right there, he's been my best friend since we were about 15 years old, and he still is to this day. And,
cool. It looks like that guy in the back in the middle is a time traveler. It looks like he's on his phone, looking at his cell phone.
Yeah. It looks like for sure, like he's on the cell phone texting someone.
Thank God. Thank God there wasn't no phones back then.
Well, you know what? Since you bring that up, if we had phones back then, if we did have phones, but can you tell us a play, a memory of a winning game shot or something that would have been awesome to capture?
Well,
and I'm going to ask a part B, which there's a play that you wish. I mean, you're glad it wasn't on video.
No, there's multiple. Probably my senior year in high school. It's just by chance that it happens. But I probably made 3 or 4 or 5 half-court shots. At the end of the buzzer, or into halftime, or into the game, and one that it really. I told you that us and Crosbyton and Lorenzo had some great battles, but one game that we played against Crosbyton was in a district tournament where you had to win the tournament to go to the playoffs, and we were playing Crosbyton, and they had to beat us twice, but they ended up beating us 95-94. But it was 95-91. The clock was running out, and I shot and made one from half court. And one of their best players was standing beside me, and I looked at him and I said, "That'll get tomorrow night started." And then we beat them the next night. But there were some good times. But it's crazy that if we'd had phones and video and stuff, that some stuff you'd want on there and some stuff you might not.
Well, can you share one that you're thankful that the phone camera's going around?
Yeah, I missed a free throw playing shower water.
I mean, did you miss it? Did you clank it, or did you airball it? No.
There wasn't no airball. But it was the end of the game, and in fact, we had a 1-point lead, and if I make those free throws, we're probably going to win. And I clanked it off the front of the rim, and we end up losing. And, that haunts me to this day. But that would have been one that, I did my share of mouthing. I'm not going to lie to you. And so missing that free throw, I had to listen to it a little bit. So I'm glad that there's not really any video evidence of that happening. But
well, funny you said you had a mouth. Lately I've been watching some reels on Facebook, and there's some retired NBA players talking about Larry Bird, that he talked a lot of shit. But the thing is, what they would say, he would tell them, like, all right, he's gonna get the ball. I'm gonna do a head shake. I'm gonna go around the pick, and I'm gonna go in this corner. I'm gonna head shake again to the right, and I'm gonna shoot and make three. And he did exactly what he said every time. And then he would get pissed off he would tell the opposing players or the coach, because why are you fucking disrespecting me? Why you got a white guy on me? That's disrespectful. Don't put a white guy on me. True stories. And these guys are telling me stories about Larry Bird. So what kind of trash talk did you do?
Well, I don't.
Okay, here's where the juicy stuff comes. Come on, Junior.
Well, it's kind of like, in fact, let me throw this in there. When I was a freshman in high school, our coach took us to watch Larry Bird play.
Oh, cool.
At West Texas A&M University against Maurice Cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's back when West Texas A&M was a Division I school. And so they were all talking about Larry Bird, and he really didn't play good that night. And we all talked about, well, he's not that good. And sure enough, there he is. But to answer your question, I told you New Deal was our biggest rivalry. And, they pretty much clobbered us in football. But in basketball, we'd clobber them. But those football guys would come to the games and lean over the rails and stuff. And I would, I might make a shot and make sure I ran by that rail and kind of gave them a little bit. But,
So
I'm glad they did. Like I told you, one of them played on the offensive line at Tech after he got out of high school. So I'm glad he didn't come over that rail, because I'd been in trouble.
You did play football as well?
I played through my sophomore year.
Okay. What position were you playing back then?
I played quarterback. And then I didn't play my junior and senior year, but at that point in time, you're talking about wanting to play basketball in college, and looking back, I wish I'd have kept playing, but I was hung up on basketball and baseball, but especially basketball, and so I didn't play those last 2 years.
Did you go to like tech camps? In the summer, basketball camps?
Not a lot. Camps are different then than they are now. The camps I can remember going to, there was a big camp in Colorado at Mesa College, and we went to it a couple of times. I went to a football camp. I don't know, Jim Plunkett?
Yeah, of course. Oakland Raiders.
Tech used to have that Shriners All-Star game, and they had a camp in relation to that. And so I went to that camp a couple of years then, football camp, and I got to meet Jim Plunkett and those guys. They were coming in for that All-Star game, but I didn't go to a lot of camp. Camps are different then. The rules were different. Up until the mid '90s, you still couldn't really. Once you got in high school, it was limited on what camps you could go to and things like that. And so, kids now have they can go do anything they want to. Up in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even when I started coaching, I'd try to get my kids in certain camps, but there was only certain ones they could go to at certain times. Where now, it's open to everything. It's just like Morgan. They're having summer league tonight, and so we couldn't do all that, back then. But
right.
And it's better that they do. But
it was a blessing that you didn't play football your junior and senior year.
Trust me.
Because that New Deal guy would remember your ass and fucking knock down your ass.
When I went from Hale Center to Lubbock and I went through New Deal, I made sure I was going fast. I didn't want to stop, because if they knew I was there, I was in trouble.
I'll make sure your tires are aired up. You've got a full tank of gas.
I'm telling
Absolutely.
you.
So let me ask you this, and of course, be honest. If there was a 3-point line back then when you were around high school, do you believe you would have played at a 4-year university?
Yes. I mean, that, like I said, that was just the difference. I mean,
Right.
That's, when we played without the 3-point line, and it made sense because, if I give you a basketball and you shoot 10 shots, if I say I'm going to give you $100 for every shot you make, you're not going to stand back there 25 feet. You're going to go to the block and shoot it off the backboard. And so in those days, the ball went to inside to the post players. And then if everybody collapsed, they kick it out and you might get to shoot 4 or 5 a game. But with the 3-point line now, it's a whole different story. And so, I think that would have really helped me as a player, being a shooter, just like Bubba Jennings, you brought, talked about him. I mean, there's no telling the points that he would have scored with a 3-point line because we did it anyway, especially in high school. Now, not college as much, but, in high school, I scored 28, 30 points a game. And, I'm going to bet, I don't know how many of those shots were 3-pointers, but, you're probably talking about 6 or 8, at least. But it would have changed a whole lot of, for me, because like I said, I wasn't the fastest and I couldn't jump the highest. And so my ability was more of being a shooter. And today's game rewards that. And, back then it was more of, it's good that you could, but high school, okay, that's great. Shoot them all you want. But when you got in college, that's why they have a 6'9" post player and the 7-foot post players, because they want that ball to go to them.
You're right. We had, and I'm not going to mention his name, we had a guy that was a phenomenal basketball player. He was 6'4". And, he plays a post. So his back was always against towards the goal. So when he went to college, I felt that hurt him because he played post. And he, of course, as 6'4" is a guard.
Yes.
Or a very small forward.
Yeah.
So, it's still the schools, the guys that are, have height, they tend to be post, centers.
Yeah. No, that's just kind of how it, even I'll say this, I guess the first 3 years I coached, we still didn't have a 3-point line in high school. And then my first or second year as a head coach, about 1988, 89, is when they implemented the 3-point line. And we still, and I had a good team. We did great. We still didn't implement it, because nobody really knew. And, but as time went on, you start finding out that, 3 points is better than 2. That's math. And, the kids changed their game and, people work on it more and shoot it more. And so, and now coaches, you've seen it and watched it. And, now those college teams, if they don't have shooters, they got problems. But, and in the NBA, there's very few players in the NBA now that play with their back to the basket. Everybody's a shooter, 7 foot.
They're the big guys. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Yes.
Yeah. When they correct me if I'm wrong, the 3-point line was at the top of the key when they first started, and now, of course, now it's extended further away.
Yeah.
Geez, you would have lit it up, Junior. Shit. Come on.
That's what some of them said. Before we had the 3-point line, a lot of us, we were way back, behind that. That line wouldn't have been anything, but it's just something for you to look at and go by. But
right. Well, when you made those half-court shots, was it your normal shot, or did you use a 2-hand on the midsection?
It probably came. It was on the run. It's probably a little midsection, but and those are all luck. It's crazy how that works. But and you got to have the ball at the right time and all that good stuff. But
well, do you remember some of the games because I mentioned I played basketball to my sophomore year until everybody started outgrowing me. Do you remember the games like 21? And of course, everybody knows Horse, but not many people remember 21. We used to play that a lot.
Yep. Yeah. 21 Horse.
Yeah. And do you remember Kenneth's story?
Yeah.
Yeah, he lived right down the alley from me.
Okay.
So I would go over there when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
And then just watch him play, and then they'll let me play every once in a while. And there'd be times I played with him, and then we play 21. And of course, when he would shoot the free throws, because when you make a bucket, you get 3 free throws.
Right.
I would have my back. I mean, I would have faced the goal. I finally caught his ass. He would come right behind me and just shoot it. I'm like, damn, dude, you're 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah.
You don't have to cheat. Did you ever play against him?
Yes. Well, no.
No.
I'm going to say probably against him. I might have played some pickup games. I used to go over, to the east side where Booker T. Washington, the gym is over there, and I would play some games over there in the summer. And I knew Kenneth mainly, probably more through baseball, being younger than basketball. But as we got into high school, I would go play at Booker T. Washington, and that's kind of where I knew him. But, I was trying to think before I came on with you guys tonight. I can't remember Hale Center playing Plainview in basketball, at any point. Now when I was coaching, we did, but not when I was playing.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky enough my freshman year. I was in track to watch Kenneth, high jump over 7 feet like every meet. So that was pretty cool to watch him, clear that bar with ease.
Yes, so, he was athletic.
Yeah, and then he ended up going to Tech and drafted by the Bears. So
yes, yeah, he was an athletic guy. He was.
Well, you want to jump into your career now? I mean, you went. You said I think you coached Plainview because there was a fraternity thing, a fraternity. Where did you coach first?
Well, that's
right there.
I started out, and I was kind of like I told you guys a while ago as a player. I was lucky that I played for Carter Williams in junior college, and then Ron Mayberry, and then Mark Adams, who ended up coaching at Tech. I played for him at Wayland. And then I was really lucky when I got out of college. My first job was in Dimmitt, Texas, and I was an assistant to Kenneth Cleveland. And Kenneth Cleveland in boys basketball, he's one of the top 10 ever. And so I got to learn a lot from him. And then from there, I was there 3 years, and then I got the head boys job at Hale Center. And so I came back to Hale Center and coached boys there for 12 years. The last 6, I did boys and girls, but I did boys all throughout there for 12 years. And then after those 12 years, John Smith was the coach at Plainview, and he went to Amarillo High. And so I went from Hale Center and got the job at Plainview. And so that was right around 2000, and coached in Plainview for 5 years, and had a good older friend of mine that was the athletic director in Spearman, and he had a basketball job open, and he talked us into coming to Spearman. And so I stayed at Plainview for 5. Then we went to Spearman when my kids were, my son was fixing to be an 8th grader, and my daughter was fixing to be a 4th grader or 5th grader. And we went to Spearman and stayed 14 years. And then kids graduated. My son played basketball at West Texas A&M. My daughter played at Tarleton State, and she got out, and they both coached, and they were in the Odessa area. And so we went from Spearman to Stanton, Texas, which is a 3A school right outside of Midland. And my last 5 years, that's where my whole family was. My daughter was my assistant, and my son was the boys coach. And then Cindy taught math there. And so we were together our last 5 years, and that's when we retired and came to Lubbock.
How did you enjoy that, having the family all there?
It was awesome. It was, it was awesome. The Permian Basin is a different area. They got money because they got oil.
Yes.
Little bit different, but it was awesome being, working with your kids, and like I said, my son was the boys coach, my daughter was my assistant, and that's, in our line of business, you don't get to do that very often. And so, my wife was teaching math at the high school. My daughter was my assistant. My son he was teaching math also and coaching the boys. So we were all there together. And, it was a great, 5 years. It was different. The Permian Basin's a little bit different. But, man, we coached some great kids and, had a little bit of success. And then, I really think, at that time when Morgan was my assistant that, knew I was getting close to retirement age, that I would retire and she'd probably take over. And the year that, I decided I was going to retire is when Lubbock Cooper opened up this new school here in Lubbock. And, she ended up getting that job. So they're in Lubbock. She's coaching there at the high school. And then my daughter, my son and his wife and family live in Shallow Water. And then my wife is here, of course. She's teaching half a day at a junior high here in Lubbock. So we're all here in Lubbock again. And
well, let me ask you, when you were guys coaching in the same school together, did they live with you? Did the kids live with you, or did they have their own place?
No, hell no. They had their own place. They were both married, and my son had, that's another thing that kind of got us to Stanton is when we were still in Spearman, my son had gotten married and they'd had our first grandkid. And at that time he was coaching in Monahans, which is, it's about 6 hours from Spearman, but it's only about an hour and a half from Stanton. And so when that job came open, my daughter was going to be moving there anyway and be the assistant coach. And so, my wife kind of looked at me and said, we can be 6 hours from our grandkid or an hour and a half. And so that's, that kind of is what got us there. But our kids couldn't have lived with us while we were coaching, because my daughter's a lot like I am. And that's pretty high strung. And man, I'm not going to say we argued a lot, but she would pretty much keep me in my place. So it was good for us to both go home to our different houses and cool down till the next day. And my Cindy would have to be the peacemaker and all that good stuff.
Well, I know that I mentioned to you that I reached out to Morgan, to share some stories, and she did share one. I didn't mention to you that I think she was in sixth grade, and she was at the end of the bench, and she was yelling at your son, and you had to kick her off, to tell her to leave, I guess. And that when I read that reminded me of what's that actress name? She was the little girl in Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans. That's what.
The little blonde. How she was feisty. I mean, I was just picturing your daughter doing that.
Morgan, from the time she was old enough, when I was coaching in Plainview, she was first, second, third grade. And she's a lot like I am. It's win or die. And Leon Hagerman was my assistant, and we would start games. She would start out sitting in the chair beside Leon, and then I would be beside him. And she'd always ask me before the game, Daddy, are we going to win? And I said, yeah, we're going to win. And she'd start out in that first chair, and there might be the jump ball and the other team might score first. We might be behind 4-2. And I'd look down there and she had a big old tear in her eye. And I said, what's the matter? She said, you said we was going to win. And so, the game would go on, and hopefully we did. She would talk to the players when they came on. If we did good, if they did bad, she'd talk to them, say, man, my daddy's mad at you and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, she was something else, and the guys loved her, and she loved those guys. But to answer that, my son, I think this was his freshman year. He had broken his finger playing football right at the end of the season, had to wear a cast for about 6 weeks. And we were at a tournament, and he had just got his cast off on like Wednesday. And, being the coach, if he wouldn't have been my kid, I probably wouldn't have let him play. But he was ready to play, and he got his cast off, and it's right hand, and when your hand's been in a cast for 6 weeks, there's not a lot of mobility there when you get it off. And so he'd got that cast off, and he wasn't doing that great. He was trying, but Morgan was sitting on the bench, and she was a 5th or 6th grader, and she was just chewing him out, just letting him have it, about not making shots, because he was a shooter. I mean, he was. But anyway, I finally told her, I said, he was barking back at her. And so I finally told both of them, I said, y'all got to cut it out. And she just kept on. I said, if you don't stop, I said, you're going over and sit with your mama. And she just kept on. So I did technically have to kick her off the bench, and she had to go sit with Cindy stands on the other side. But yeah, no, she was something else. But
did you ever imagine during that time that you would end up coaching with your daughter?
no, I mean, I don't know coaching with her. She played at Tarleton. It was crazy. My two kids, my son's about 6'4", about 225 pounds, played at West Texas A&M, won the Texas high school 3-point contest. I mean, he was a shooter. And my daughter's 5'6", but she's a little bitty good. I mean, she's a go-getter, and she played at Tarleton State for 4 years and ended up in the, she's in the top 10 of all-time assists, so they're two different type kids. Both of them coached, and, I knew I'd probably get to watch them coach and go, be involved in it, but I didn't know about being able to coach with them. And so that was a special time to, and it was good for me. One is, later in my career, because, those 5 years at Stanton, I let her do a whole, because that's what she wants to do, and that's what she is doing. And, I turned a lot over to her and let her do a lot of stuff, and, gave her a little. I didn't have to give her a lot. She's she's been blessed playing for good coaches. When I was at Plainview, it's when Danny Wren and, Plainview, they won 3 state championships in a row, and Danny and I were suite mates at Wayland. And so Morgan got to tag along with Alicia and Chelsea Welch and Taj Janae, and so she be around all that and being around Danny and things like that. And so she's like doing it. So I knew I'd watch her coach, but I didn't know that we would coach together. So that was a blessing for us. It sure was.
Well, that's cool. Well, it's I'll mention one more story she shared, and we talked about it earlier. There was an incident where your son was in the back of the bus, and you guys were going back home, and he was just mouthing to you. So what did you do?
Well, now that they can't fire me now, right?
Right, they can't.
But it was my son's senior
The
year.
statute of limitation is done.
I hope that's right. But my son was a senior, and we had a really good team, and I had about 7 seniors that year that were real close to each other. And, they'd come over to the house, and, we got to know each other and give each other a hard time. Well, we were at the Caprock tournament in Lubbock during Christmas, and we had played a game, I don't remember, at Coronado or somewhere, and the girls, Morgan and them, were playing at Estacada. And so we were in the midst of trying to get from our game to get to their game. And we were going down 19th Street and got to the red light on University. And Jordan and another kid I had named Josue, 2 or 3 of them, but they were giving me some grief about something. And I said, if y'all don't shut up, I said, I'm going to come back there and whip your ass. And they just kept on. So we got to 19th and University, and the light was red. So I just put the bus in park and went back there and just kind of started waylaying on them a little bit. And then got through and went back up there and sat down, put the bus in drive, and we took off. But
Did they stop talking shit, or did they continue?
No, they stopped. They didn't think I'd do it.
How old were you then?
I'm sorry?
How old were you?
How old was I?
20s, 30s?
Oh, no, I was Jordan was 18.
He's in his 40s.
I was probably about 40, 48 or 9.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, I was older. 18. I'm trying to think. 18. Yeah, that'd be about right. But yeah, it was just funny because they didn't think I'd do it, and I did it. And I'm not saying I should have. And they can't fire me now, but I'm sure they're not the safest thing to do. But
Now, if Jordan, if you're listening to this, did you get a good punch in?
I beat the shit out of them.
Good for you, man. That's the daddy in you. That wasn't the coach. That was the daddy in you.
That was daddy coming out. That's right.
That's awesome. That is a great story. Hearing you talk about Morgan as a child, it sounds like she was a natural born coach.
She was.
She was coaching as a child. I mean, she's been coaching.
I'm telling you, she's like that actress from Remember the Titans, Panettiere,
No,
whatever.
a lot of people have said that, and I mean, we would when she was old enough, whether we were at Hale Center or Plainview, but we would come home at night after a game, and she would be in a room on a whiteboard, and she'd be drawing X's and O's, and she would be talking, whoever my players were that year, she'd be either telling them good job or, kind of getting after them like I did at halftime or, after the game or during, whenever. And she'd be drawing all that up, and she wanted to sit on the bench and blah, blah, blah. So that's always been her passion. That's what she wants to do. And she's good.
She was your assistant coach for a long time.
She was. She sure was. And, and like I said, it helped. Those, the years we were at Plainview, she, Danny Wren was awesome, with her, he'd let her do the same thing on his bench or take her on the bus. When they went to state, we went with them. And, Morgan got to do a lot and learned a lot, because even though she was younger, she was very attentive. My son, he loved basketball and he was great at it. But at the games, he'd just soon be sitting on the other side of the bleachers by his friends or girls or whoever. Morgan never was like that. She wanted to be on the bench and she wanted to watch, and she did. And she's done good.
Well, let's talk about. I had a picture. I downloaded one of your pictures from your Facebook page. I don't see it in my file. I don't know what happened to. But let's talk about 700. So, where did you get that 700 win?
My 700th win was at Stanton, my first year. When we got there, I was close to 700, and we playing Kermit, and we won. That was my 700th win. And like I said, in my career, I've been, very fortunate, with people I learned from, Coach Adams in college. When I got to high school, my first years as a head coach, Malin Hunt was the girls' coach. And Malin was at Plainview. She was the coach. She coached Cindy and Gay Hempel and those guys that went to state in 1979. And so I learned stuff from her. Joe Lombard's wife was my English teacher, and I got to know Joe. So, I was around a lot of good coaches, Kenneth Cleveland. And so, one, I got to learn from those guys. And then two, I was pretty fortunate where I coached. I had good players. And so we went through and my first year at Stanton got 700th win. And,
how did that feel?
It's awesome. It's awesome. I mean, I kind of, if you coach long enough, you got to win some games. But, 100, 200, 400, those are different. But when you start getting, 700, 800, it's, it means a lot, and the names that you're with, like Danny Wren and Joe Lombard and Leslie Broadhurst and Kenneth Cleveland. And, so we stayed and ended up, when it was all said and done, 785. And so,
so you got 15 more.
15 more.
Well, you got to go back and try to get those 15.
That's what Morgan said. I've had a bad hip for a couple of years, and so November 4th, I'm getting hip replacement. And so if I can get my wheels going again, I might see if I can get 15 more, in the coming years and get back into it. So, but
you'll be wishing you had a hip replacement way before.
That's what everybody's telling me, and I hope you're right. I hope it goes good.
I can tell you from firsthand experience, I have 2 artificial hips.
Is that right?
I have 2 and yeah, I mean, I was really young. I was in my 40s when I had both of mine. So
yeah.
Best thing I ever did. Yeah, it gives you a new lease on life. And
it's been, everybody's tired of me limping around because you can't do anything. It hurts, hurts so bad. So they're tired of it. So finally.
I was going to say, do you think it's going to help your golf game?
I played a lot of golf, and I haven't been able to do that.
Oh, wow.
Because of my hip. And so that's another thing. So hopefully November the 4th is when my surgery is, that I can get back maybe and coach some more, and then I can get back and play golf, because I've missed that. I played a lot of golf in the summers. But
Well, good. Well, hopefully you'll get that 800 and you'll stay for another, I don't know, 4 or 5 years to get 900. And then they're going to wheel you on the wheelchair to get you 1,000. So
let's don't push it now.
Well, hey, I want to go back to high school, and this is not basketball. This is, what did you guys do in high school? I mean, like in Plainview in the late 70s, people went to Gibson's parking lot, and then when we were in seniors, we went to what's it called, the space station or the fun station?
Oh yeah, I know where you're talking about.
So, what did you? I mean, did you guys go to Plainview?
But in Hale Center, they, back then in Hale Center, it's got one main street.
Is it Main Street?
Main Street. And people, there was a grocery store on one end and like a White's auto store on the other. And that's pretty much, you either drug Main, you drove back and forth and wasted all that gas back then, or they'd stop at one of the, either White's or usually at White's. And that was about it. I mean,
hell, you could probably walk that.
No, well, you could. It's a little longer than that, but yeah, you could. And then, I think some of them went to Plainview. I didn't hang out at the parking lot in Plainview that much, but, I didn't really until, I guess it was the summer before my senior year is when I met Cindy and we started dating. And so up until that point, if I wasn't playing baseball, I was probably back in Hale Center. But after that, I got to going. But I was always chasing her, so I was probably at her house. But,
well, before we get to Plainview,
Speaking of Cindy, tell us how you met her.
Yeah,
I met her through baseball. I think this was the summer of 1979, the summer before my senior year, and I really think through friends that we had probably both heard of each other, but we didn't know each other. And there's one day that I can't remember, we'd either got through with baseball practice or we were going to baseball practice. And the guy, the guy I was with said, "Hey, let's go, let's go." Cindy was a lifeguard at one of the pools, West Ridge or West Gate or whatever it's called. He wanted to go see her, talk to her or something. So I went, and we kind of met that day at the pool, and it just kind of went from there. And so, I guess you could say, we met through baseball, and we had mutual friends. I mean, some of her friends that maybe I'd known, or maybe some of my friends she had known. But as far as meeting each other, that was kind of how we did it, through baseball.
Were you smitten right off the bat?
No pun intended.
I was connected right off the bat, so I just started chasing her. But we did, we really did. I mean, we kind of, we from that day that we met at the pool, and from that point on, we pretty much dated till we got married. Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. Well, I want to talk about this picture. It looks like you're about to throw a curveball. And
yeah,
is that a big old chaw in your cheek, or is that big league bum?
No, that's a chaw.
Oh, damn.
My mom's gonna hate that, but that's what it was. And yeah, that was the team right there that we were good. That's the summer before my senior year, and that's when we had Bobby Reyes and Ronnie Ortegon and
oh wow, that's a damn good team.
Greg Jacobs and Larry Vera. Paul Hickman. I mean, I'm leaving a lot of people out, but we were good. We got beat in Denham Springs, Louisiana. But
oh, wow.
We had a good team the next summer, but that summer there, we were pretty solid. Yeah.
That's cool.
Jeff Anderson.
Yeah, it was a damn good picture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you, in the All-Stars, did you ever play against the Monterey guy that, like, he was All-State, Steve Coleman? You guys didn't play.
We didn't play Lubbock.
Okay. Yeah, I was a sophomore and he was a senior. I was able to watch him play. And he was a damn good player.
There were some good
Yeah.
basemen, yeah.
Yeah.
There is today, but
There's
we,
Plainview produced quite a few good baseball players
yes,
and
no,
football players. Yeah,
yep, no,
I think more so than basketball. But there were a lot of good, you know,
that,
college and pro ball players that came out of
well,
Plainview.
when I was in school, Irvin Davis, Royce Coleman, those guys went and played at the University of Texas. Uh, when I went to Plainview to coach, I coached, multiple people that in football, you know, uh, Jamar Wall,
Oh yeah,
uh,
Canadian guy, Canadian football. I
Jamar
take.
Wall, he played, or Rod Ainsley. Uh,
Mhm.
we had some really good. In fact, the 5 years I was there, I think 3 years in a row they had 2,000-yard rushers. Different people, you
Oh
know. I
damn.
mean, and they were good at basketball too. And so, I was fortunate when I was growing up to be around a lot of those good athletes. And then when I went there to coach, we had some stellar athletes.
Well, Rod Ansley, he beat Gil Wright. Gil Wright was our classmate in '83.
Yes.
The high scoring. I think he scored 47 against Coronado.
Yeah.
Gil did, and I think Rod beat that record.
Yeah. I had Bryson Davis. Bryson Davis, he was a fullback in football. He was 6'3", about 245. And he went to play for Jackie Sherrill at Mississippi State. But he in the Burke Burnett tournament in basketball, he scored 42 for me. But Brylan Braddock, there were multiple, you know, good athletes that came through there at that time.
Oh, cool. And then Coach Billingsley was there, of course.
Yeah, yeah, Coach Billingsley. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're gonna have him next week on the
Is
show.
that right?
Yeah, he's gonna be on there. So
he's been there forever. Now that's a guy that's coached a long time.
yes,
Yes, he is. He's
yes.
87. He's 87.
That's crazy.
I know.
So high school. Let's talk about teachers. You take over. You like asking the teacher question, Lisa.
I do. We all have not only our favorite teacher, just somebody that we clicked with in high school, but we also have teachers that really helped us or left an imprint on us. We'd like to know who that was for you.
I really had my English teacher. Her name was Sherry Krieger, and I wasn't the best student. I mean, I'm not saying I was a bad student, but I was just one. I wanted to play basketball and show up to class. And, if I made a B, that was fine. If I made an A, that was great. And if it was a C every once in a while, I might get my butt beat, but that was okay too. But Sherry Krieger was a really good English teacher at Hale Center during that time. And she coached, she taught at Hale Center for years. And so I would say that she was one that had a big influence. And then, like I said, Joe Lombard, who's one of the winningest high school basketball coaches ever. When I was in high school, his wife was the English teacher at Hale Center and the basketball coach. And so she was really good. And, she did a lot for me, and I got to be around Joe. And in fact, they won the state championship in 1979. I know that's coaching, not teaching, but she was a really good English teacher also. And then one that really probably helped me, I consider it a teacher, but Danny Ivy was our ag teacher. And, at that time, and especially in small schools, you were just in ag. They just put you in ag. But my dad being a cotton farmer, and we raised some pigs and stuff, but I was in ag. And Danny Ivy was an awesome person, an awesome ag teacher. And then, it was kind of special for me, him being my ag teacher. And then when I came back to Hale Center to coach, I got to coach his kids. And so, that was kind of a special deal for me and him. But, probably Sherry Krieger and Danny Ivy and of course, Babs Lombard they were all probably the three most important.
Cool. Well, you mentioned, a couple times about your dad being a cotton grower. Did you have to get up early in the mornings, even during school, and do some feed the pigs and work weekends? No.
Did you say should I been or did
Or
I?
did you? Did you?
Well, maybe feed the pigs some, but being a cotton farmer, we had some pigs when I was in high school just for the hell of it. But mainly he just was cotton. He was a farmer, and so as far as getting up early, I didn't have to milk the cows or anything like that. And, the biggest, I love to play golf, and that, now I look back on it now, and it's really not a good story, but back then, you didn't have phones and stuff, and so my job in the summer is drive the tractor for my dad, and my buddies would let me know that that night they might call or I might see them. They say, hey, we're going to play golf at 2:00 tomorrow, and so I'd get up and drive the tractor, and about 1:00 something would break. And so I'd go to the golf course, play golf, and my dad'd be madder than hell.
Was it sabotage break?
Well, that, like I said, something would break. I don't really know, but not being phones, and nowadays you couldn't get by with that because if something breaks, you just make a phone call.
Yeah, they're probably smart tractors these days.
Your dad farmed back in the days before they had the big irrigation things, and they had the irrigation pipes with the sleeves. My dad was a cotton farmer as well.
Yes, yep. Had to set the tubes and move the pipe.
Put the irrigation sleeves and move them. Oh, I did that. I grew up on a cotton farm.
Yeah.
You said something a second ago when I asked you the question about the teachers. Sometimes it's not always the teacher. Like you mentioned, your ag teacher. It made me think about my sister, who's now a superintendent, but the teacher who had the most impact on her career ever was her ag teacher, because she was lost and she didn't have a sense of direction, and she'd moved from Plainview to Dallas to a big giant high school and didn't know anyone, and her ag teacher saw potential in her and kind of took her under her wing and gave her direction and changed the course of her life. And it wasn't a teacher of hers, it was her ag teacher. So,
that's cool.
It's not always the person in the classroom who's teaching.
Right.
It's somebody who says, hey, I see you, I see your potential.
Yep.
I'm gonna nudge you. We all need a little nudge in high school.
With teaching or coaching or whatever you want to call it in education, there's always that, and it's weird how with different kids, there's that one person that the way they do it or the way they say it or just their demeanor, it catches kids. And that's just, I think, like with Danny Ivy, I mean, he was just an old ag teacher. I mean, but just the way he did stuff and the way, he was just good as gold. And, and that's, I think that's important to remember, especially in education, but really in anything, what you say in your demeanor and things like that, it can be positive, it can be negative, and it's.
Yeah.
I'm about to share a photo.
I want to go back to something. You'd mentioned some of these really hard ass coaches that you had, especially when you started out your college career. How did that experience as a player, negative or positive, influence how you became as a coach? Like, did you take to heart, like, okay,
well, hell, you beat the shit out of the son.
sometimes you have to do that. It's kind of like,
I'm sorry, that was the daddy. That was the daddy, not the coach. My bad.
right, that was a dad moment. And as a dad or a parent, as a coach, sometimes you have to have a calculated tantrum to scare the shit out of your people.
Yeah.
But, did you consciously extrapolate those experiences and think, okay, when I coach, I don't want to be like that. And when I coach, I want to be like that. I mean, did you have moments of reflection of your experience as a player with different coaches, and how did that impact how you coached?
That it was really, it was good for me because, like you said, those 2 years at Kilgore, I mean, he's meaner than hell. And then when I got to Wayland, especially with Mark Adams, Mark was a great coach, but he wasn't like that. Now he'd get after you some, but he just wasn't a screamer or holler or whatever.
He respected you guys.
He just, that's just what we're going to do by God and blah, blah, blah. Well, then when I went to work at Dimmick for Kenneth Cleveland, who, I mean, he won nearly 1,000 games. If you wouldn't have got killed by lightning, he would still. I mean, he's one of the top ones ever. You at that you thought he was asleep on the bench sometimes, but when he did speak, they did listen, and he was awesome. And so, I got all avenues of you can be a hard ass, you can be a this, and you can be that, and you take it, whether it's X's and O's or your mental approach or your verbal, and I was a little, I was especially early in my career, I was more like my junior college coach than I was those other guys. I was pretty, and that's, I'd get after them, and I didn't cuss them, but I'd get
You're
after them.
pretty vocal.
Well, I mean that's I'd get home.
Yeah.
I had this one player for me that when I first, his name was Vincent Roberts, probably the most loyal player I've ever had. Not the greatest, but the most loyal. But I would, I'd chew him out and stuff. And Cindy, when I'd get home, she'd chew my ass out. You can't treat him like that, blah, blah. And so, but it was, like you said, I think that's where, sometimes you have an advantage. I had an advantage over other young coaches because I was fortunate enough to play in junior college for this coach, and I was fortunate enough to play at Wayland for this coach. And so you get different techniques. If you're not getting to do that, if you're not playing, you can study it and you can watch it, but you're not getting to experience it. And so, that's where, sometimes you have an advantage, and you're exactly right. You can take the good and the bad, or your style or not your style. Danny Wren, one of the greatest girls coaches ever. And me and him were different. He wasn't a screamer and a holler. Now he could look at them and he could point at them, but it's just different ways of getting stuff done, and your players respect that, or you hope they do anyway. And,
For sure.
Well, I want to go ahead and segue into this photo, and hopefully she's there nearby.
Well, I was hoping she would get here. Morgan's at that summer league game, and when she has summer league, Cindy has to babysit because Morgan has a 7-month-old.
Okay.
And so I was kind of waiting for her to come through the door, but she ain't come through here yet.
I think she did that on purpose. She's doing that.
Well, you never know. She's the one. She was the, like I said, she played for Lynn Hunt there at Plainview. She was on the team with Gay Hempfield. In fact, I think 1979, and I may be wrong on this, but I think that was the first year they played 5-on-5 in women's basketball. And,
I remember that. Yeah.
Yep.
And
so how old were y'all when you got married, Junior?
I'm sorry?
How old were y'all when you got married?
I'm going to say I had graduated from Wayland. So I was 22 and she just turned 21. I take that back. She was 20. We got married on August the 18th, and her birthday is August the 20th. And I'm a year older. And so I had just graduated from Wayland, got a job at Dimmitt, and then she had another year left at Wayland. And so I was 22. She was fixing to be 21.
Where did you guys get married?
I'm sorry?
Where did you guys get married?
We got married in Plainview.
Okay.
We like I said, she played for Lynn, and Gay Hempfield was on her team. And, that was the first year, I believe they went to state that year in 1979. And I think that was the first year that the women played 5-on-5.
Yeah. Can you share how you proposed to her? You don't have to. You don't have to. This gonna sound, but I don't know. We dated. We started dating in 79, 80, 81, 82. I mean, I think she pretty much told me she wanted a ring. I mean, I don't have a story of I got on my knee or we were at a restaurant or, I mean, we were, if I really remember correctly, she was a freshman at Angelo. I was a sophomore at Kilgore, and she came down to visit, and we decided at that time we were going to get married and went and got her a ring. And
became engaged. But that I don't have I can't give we jumped out of an airplane or anything like that. So,
I think
No, she grabbed you by the balls and said, "Marry me, man."
well, it's more like, I guarantee you with her, man, I couldn't let her go. It's more like me begging her,
Okay.
but, I think I remember she came to visit at Kilgore one weekend and we went and got a engagement ring, and I guess that would be how I proposed, but,
Oh, nice.
I think that's how it was done in the 80s. You don't know this, but I was married to Ronnie Ortegon.
were you really?
Yes. I was like, we were in college and I said, "Hey, we're getting married." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I should tell my parents."
No, she was like, "No, your parents already know." I asked
There was no proposal, and it was like, okay, my parents calling his parents, and they drove to Dallas, but I'm the one who said, "Hey, we're getting married."
That's awesome.
Like, you're not going to go off and play pro ball without me. So
that's what could have happened. That's right.
That's kind of how it happened. I called the shot and said, "We're doing this." So
there you go. That's right. But,
well, hey guys, we've been on about an hour and a half, so it's probably at the end of the show. So, I want to ask. Looks like you have an autograph under your cap.
yes, I've been dying to ask about that.
no, it's not an autograph. It's just live lucky.
Okay.
I love it. I love
You know
it.
what? Your daughter said on the sidelines, and when you coach basketball, you rubbed your head a lot. That I can see what happened to your head. She said you will rub your head on the sidelines.
I knew when we started, and you said you'd talk to my daughter that this wasn't going to be good. See, because with this hat on, people don't know if I have hair or not. But
Right.
if she's going to claim that I don't have any hair, I'm going to promise she's a whole lot of it. I lost yes. You got to, that's another thing I didn't bring up. You got to remember, I coached both my son and my daughter.
Right.
And so, yes, I did lose a lot of hair with her. Jordan, I would just grab him by the jersey and say a few choice words and go on. Morgan was a little different. She would always have something to, reply back to, and it was awesome. But if she wants to talk about I ain't got no hair, she's the reason. That's exactly right.
Well, she didn't mention it. Yeah, she didn't mention the hair, but she just said you rubbed it, and she said you would drop on the floor several times. And
she's making. You know how people make stuff up, and you go fishing.
Hold on, I've got a video she sent me of you. No, I'm kidding.
Thank goodness. She exaggerates. You go fishing, you catch a fish this big, and in 2 years is this big, and that's kind of how these stories are. But no, that's good.
Yeah. Well, hey, Junior, we really appreciate you coming on, and when I first reached out to you, I got to have the white wizard on our podcast. You're a phenomenal basketball player. So, if you don't mind, can you share maybe some parting words?
I think it's awesome what y'all are doing. Not just focusing on what we're doing as old people, but kind of going back into the glory days, when we were in high school and we did have good teams and we did do this. And, you can kind of brag a little bit now because hell, some of the people might be thinking you're lying, aren't even alive, but that's a joke. But, I appreciate what y'all are doing. I appreciate you having me. And, I just, if I gave any advice to any of those young ones, just, do what you do and, be sincere with it and believe in what you're doing.
Well, I still like to have you on again with some of your boys, like some of the guys you played with, Ira, and you mentioned, if you can still work that out, man, just let me know. We'll squeeze you guys in.
Ira would be great. He served in the Navy forever, and he was a great athlete there at WH. Like I said, he, to this day, he's still my best friend. And hell, I'd love to get 4 or 5 of those guys, or even some of the, baseball players. I tried to get Larry, and he would never respond to me. And I know he got my message, but he's up in Ohio playing golf. But no, that'd be awesome. I'd love to do that.
Well, I could definitely, like I said, I'm in contact with Urban. Maybe I can get him on the horn, and then and do that. So, but anyway, Lisa, you want to go ahead and do our parting words?
Yes. Junior, it's been such a joy and pleasure to visit with you and to meet you. And, just listening to your stories. First of all, I mean, you have such a storied coaching career. And, I know that you can reflect back and realize how incredibly charmed and blessed of a life you had. We say this with all our guests growing up in West Texas during our era in the 70s and 80s, that life was pretty charmed back then. But what an incredible blessing, to have the experiences with your kids in coaching and to have such a close family. And it's just been joyful to listen to that. That's a rare thing. Very few dads get to say they coached their kids and coached with their kids. And what a real blessing. What a real blessing. I'm very touched and moved by that. And I'm so honored that you agreed to come on and spend some time with us.
I
And how lucky you married a Plainview girl.
Yeah. I'm telling you, and she's the stud of the family. I wish she'd have got home so you could talk to her, but and she's probably better coach than all of us. But
well, you know what? I'd love to have Gay Hemphill and those in that group on.
Yeah.
So maybe you can convince her, and if she just gives me a list of names, I'll help her, and Lisa and I will help contact some of these people.
Right.
And we'd love to have them because we had the '87 state champs on with Coach Harleston. We had them on.
Right.
And Texas, she went to Texas.
Yes.
She was a great lady. Yep. But we definitely want her and you and your guys. So we'd love it. Hey, before we leave, there was a basketball movie back in the 70s. It was a damn good movie. It had probably Lisa's one of her stud muffins, Robbie Benson. It was called 101. You remember that movie?
I do.
I mean, it's what he went through and how they got paid.
It's rough. There's time. I'm gonna tell one more story. I'm gonna get off.
That's cool.
My sophomore year in college, coach, we had 16 players at the first game, and we got beat. Went to Houston and played and got beat and came back. And we started practice the next day, and we ran, and finally, after probably about 25 sets of line, coach said, "We're going to run today until we only have 12 of you MFs left." I thought, all right, that's 16. So 4 people's got to quit. We ran about 85 sets of lines that day until the 4th guy finally quit. And that's the closest I ever came to I was nearly number 3. I was like, okay, this isn't, but no, it was crazy. But, it's, you fight, like I said, he made me a man, and, he helped me grow up and do things like that. But
did he ever use like, come on, you fucking mama's boy, get your ass, anything like that?
We ran when he was really mad. And you got to remember, these are 20, 21, 22-year-old guys. When we ran sprints, when he was really mad, we had to hold a ball above our head and do it between our fingertips and say mama. We had to. He always told us we owed only 2 things. The only things in life we owed things to were 2 things, and that was basketball and your mama. And he would make us run doing that basketball, and we'd have to say mama the whole time.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Now, before we end, I want to allude to that. I'm in this to some degree in the sports world. I'm a functional training specialist and a yoga therapist, and something that you learned, that we all learned in our era was we learned resilience and capacity. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's very lacking in our youth today. Our young people are not resilient, and they don't have the capacity to endure hardship and tough times. And, it's just a sign of the times. I'm not capping on young kids today. It's just different times. But in our era, we developed resilience. You could handle hard things much more. We weren't coddled.
Well, it didn't matter if it was your teacher or your coach. Back in the day, if you went home and said, well, I got in trouble for your mom or your daddy slapped you upside the head and said, well, you shouldn't have done that, and
Right.
go back and do better. Now it's a little different. I mean, it's always somebody else's fault. And that's, they're great kids today, and that's all. It's, the times have changed with technology and all that, but it's just a little different, how.
Well, I mean, the teachers and coaches today have to be careful, like you said earlier. They have to be careful because now they have camera phones, videos, and they have to be careful. And then, I'm sorry, I think today's kids are fucking entitled. I'm sorry.
No, well, they can't. Yes, it's just different. I mean,
we'll leave it at that.
It's just different. My junior college coach wouldn't have made it a day nowadays, man.
No, he'd be in jail.
That's right.
Shit, some of the players would have whipped his ass.
Well, I mean, you didn't see the levels of depression and anxiety in young people back in our day because kids had resilience and capacity.
Yeah.
And that's not the case nowadays. Like you said, I mean, my sister's in education, all my family's in education. And now it's like, you hurt my child's feelings. You never said your feelings were hurt. I played sports all through school. I mean, it's like the league of their own. There's no crying in baseball.
And then, they would say, oh, rub some dirt on it. You're fine.
Exactly.
You rub some dirt, man.
Yep.
Hey guys, we were getting close to a minute 45. Junior, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I hope to see you and you guys and Cindy and her basketball player teammates.
Yes. Give Cindy our best.
I sure will.
Good night, sir.
Thank y'all.
And thank you, Morgan, for the good juicy stuff.
Yes.
I can't wait to see her.
All right, good night, sir. That was good. When you get these guests then you go to Plainview. I mean, we have no knowledge of that town, but it's, Judy is an adopted son from Plainview. He is. Like you said, of course he married a Plainview girl and coached there. So he's someone like we relate to. So.
Yeah. It was lovely having him on for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, again, I hope to have him again. And also with Cindy, that would be cool to have Gay and some of those players from the 79 or 80 team. So that would be she was 81. So, if she can get some of those players, that would be really cool. But hey, guys, we're going to get close to the hour and 45-minute mark. But I want to say thank you for joining us. And next week, the legend, the icon, Coach Neil Billingsley, as everybody knows him as Coach Bill. How old is this cat, Lisa?
87.
87 is still doing it, man. That's good for him.
I know. It's just unbelievable.
Absolutely. So we're gonna have to bring our A+++ game, Lisa. So anyway, guys, good night. Good night, Lisa. What I always say, peace and love. It's been a while. Peace and love. So good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.